What happened to your finger?
Morning, everybody. It's time for What's Going On here again. I'm Bob Zen. Calvin Castine's got the camera. And this morning we're going to be visiting with Clyde Rabideau. And my, has he changed since he's been elected mayor of the city of Plattsburgh. You've got older since you became mayor, Mr. Rabideau, huh?
I've got younger.
You got younger, huh?
Yeah.
So tell us, you are the father of the mayor of the city of Plattsburgh.
Well, he's my son.
Oh, you like that better?
Yeah, I like that better.
Okay. Yeah.
We have a mutual thing between him and I that we're brothers, not really father and son. I told him he's getting too old to be my son.
You don't look old enough to be his father, I guess. Clyde's mustache makes him look a little older probably than what he really is, too. We're out on the Irish Settlement Road here in Plattsburgh, New York, and I want to tell you right off the bat, I got to quote something here. I want to make sure I say it right. I was told to try to check with you to do a story, and I was told to tell you that if you don't do the show, it's an injustice to society. Who do you think told me that?
Got to be my cousin Donald Rainville.
It was Don Rainville from Champlain, New York.
It's got to be.
That bought the Bill LeClaire and Nancy building out there on Route 9, and very clean and attractive place. And he tells us that that's where I got my book, by the way, from him.
Is that right?
Yeah, he got it, I guess, through Cecile and hundreds. So how are you related to Don Rainville?
He's my first cousin.
Yes.
His mother and my father are brother and sister.
Okay, so that's why he's pushing the Rabideaus here.
Well, I don't know if he's as much a Rabideau as I am, really.
His mother, you said. She's still living in Plattsburgh.
Yes, she is.
Met her at a couple of book sales that they had on her porch years ago. Yeah. Retired teacher. Okay, get back to...
So Donald Rainville is really a Rabideau.
He's really a Rabideau. Well, you'll be glad to hear that. Well, he kept it in the right part of the alphabet, R.
Right.
Clyde, tell us a little bit about Clyde. Where were you born, and a little bit about your background, way back.
Way back.
You know?
I was born in Shazy Lake, 1936.
Oh, you're telling us how old.
Well,
okay.
I'm not ashamed of how old I am, or I'm not. You know, I don't try to keep it a secret. But I lived there until 1945. We moved to the R. Settlement Road in Plattsburgh in June of 1945.
That would be this road right here.
That's where we're at now.
Was your father a farmer?
My father was a fur trapper all his life. I mean, he farmed. We farmed, really. Well, he trapped furs, but his main occupation was a fur trapper.
Well, with the number of Rabideaus there are up in that area, you must have had a big family? In your
there were
family?
five children.
Five children? Yeah. So he was able to make enough in trapping, say, to make a living for a family like that?
I remember it during the Second World War, and I think it was about 1943. I saw a $1,000 bill that he got when he sold his furs. Well,
$1,000 bill.
A $1,000 bill.
45, you couldn't see hundreds.
I know that. To this day, I can see that $1,000 bill. I thought it was fake, but fur was, of course, fur was at high price back then, and that was yeah, he was an extremely good trapper.
Was that in streams, or was it in the lake itself?
Streams.
In the
stream trapping mostly. He trapped beaver, mink, raccoon, fisher, all of the wild game in the North Country.
Did you learn to do it with him?
Of course,
you learned all that. Huh?
I have many traps left to this day, but I don't trap, but I did trap. In fact, most of us children trapped.
There are a lot of people trapping today, more than people realize.
Today, I don't trap. I just don't have that urge anymore to trap the animals. I like the wild animals, and I don't criticize people who do trap, but I'm just not into it anymore.
Now, when you got married and lived in Shazy Lake, what were you doing when you first got married and raising your family?
I was in the Marine Corps when I got married. In fact, my son, who's the mayor, I had 5 children, but he was born in Miami Beach, Florida, when I was in the service.
Okay, so he wasn't born here.
No, he's a rebel.
We got a non-native as a mayor of the city of Plattsburgh.
He's a Southerner.
He's a go-getter, too. He learned that from his father and his grandfather.
Yes.
Obviously, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, from his parents, and so, yes. Yeah.
We now, when you say Shazy Lake, somewhere along your way, there must be someone in your family named King.
There's Kings and Brooks in Shazy Lake. My grandmother was a Brooks, and her parents were Fred Brooks and Philomene St. Germain Brooks. Her name was originally Rousseau. That's part of the French thing coming south. Her name changed from Rousseau to Brooks. Like everybody's name changed, or most people who came south from Canada, their name changed.
You got out in what, 46? You said 45?
So I moved from Shasia Lake in 1945 to here.
Here, okay. When did you get out of the service?
Oh, 1957.
So did you retire from the service?
No.
I didn't
No,
think so,
no.
but you were in quite a while, though.
No, 3 years.
Oh, you went in and, that's right, you didn't go in during wartime. I
No.
couldn't make it. I wasn't old enough. Got to get back here. All right. So now, what were you doing when you moved onto this road, when you were out of the service?
No, I was just a kid. I was only 8 years
Oh,
old.
with your parents. I beg your
Yes.
pardon, you moved here. All right.
I was 8 years old when I
All
moved.
right. So when you got out of the service in 57, what did you do?
I started work for Coca-Cola and worked 10, 12-hour days, and I figured there was a better way to make a living. So I got some education, and I went to work for the Air Force as an accountant.
Did you go to school here in Plattsburgh?
No, I went to Albany.
You go to school, yeah. Now, your family went down there with you during this time?
I had 2 children when I started and 3 when I finished. Worked full-time. My wife worked full-time. I mean, it was a tough go, but it was worth it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then along the way, I understand you became a teacher yourself.
No,
No? I
No.
thought you were a teacher in
no, I
Hawaii.
assisted. No,
Okay.
I worked for the federal government in Hawaii.
Okay, what do you do?
I did. I retired in
You
November of
retired-
last year.
Oh, okay. Now you finally got your retired.
Yes.
What did you do?
You've got me from 8 years old to
Yeah,
retirement.
I got you quick there.
From about 10 minutes when it took a lifetime.
Okay.
But after 37 years, I retired. I worked again for the Department of Defense. I worked on Ford Island in the middle of Pearl Harbor. Matter of fact, every morning and evening, I had to take a ferry and go right by the Arizona Memorial. I mean, within 100 yards of it.
Mm-hmm.
I worked on the island that's where the Arizona sunk.
We were trying to get a hold of you last year, and then I guess you went back to Hawaii. You go to Hawaii for the winter?
I got married last August.
You got married last
Yes.
August.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, she's right now in Hawaii. I'm going there next week for 2 weeks, and I'll be back the 1st of August. She's coming back for a short period of time. She has a business, and I'm really going there to help out in the business for 2 weeks.
So her name wasn't King either, then that, in that
She's queen, but
she's the queen, all right. That's very good.
but no, her name wasn't Kate.
She's from Hawaii. She was
Yes,
a native
she's
of Hawaii.
3rd generation
Okay.
Hawaiian.
So you, does she come here every summer?
Oh, yes. Well, don't forget, we just got married last year, but we've been
That's
coming
right.
here
Excuse me, yeah.
the past 2 summers we've been
Uh-huh.
coming.
Now you got a beautiful spot here on Irish Settlement Road, 4 or 5 miles away from Route 22, and you built a house, you said.
Yes.
Built a house. His own wood. Look at that tree right up there. Came out of one tree and made all your cupboards out of that.
My father, before he died, and I cut that tree down, and that lumber that all the cabinets are made of from that lumber that he and I cut down.
So now, as retired, you really are retired. You help at the store or business. That
I
you
help
have?
at her business in the wintertime, and I'm going back for 2 weeks. But I'm doing genealogy research. I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm just enjoying myself.
Okay, one of the
I
reasons.
think I've died and gone to heaven.
One of the reasons we're here, of course, is because of the genealogy research, the Rabideaus and the Rabideaus, and we'll find out that there's many ways to spell Rabideau by Clyde M. Rabideau. We'll take a short break. You're watching Hometown Cable, and you're looking at Senior. That is Clyde Rabideau. You have to put Senior on here.
No,
You're
he
giving
puts
him credit. He puts Junior.
He puts junior. I don't need to put senior.
Okay, so when you see Junior, that's the other one. Before we get into your book, 5 children. Tell us about your 5 children. We can't just talk about the mayor, so tell
I'm
us.
proud of all of them. Of course,
Uh-huh.
we got the one that's the mayor.
Yeah.
I have another son who's an attorney in Florida, West Palm Beach, Florida.
What's his name?
It's Guy,
Yes, Guy.
Michael. I have another son, Mitchell. He is a superintendent on construction. He works for Luck Brothers, and he renovates bridges in the North Country here. I have a daughter, Michelle, who's a nurse's aide. Right now she's at Camp Polka Moonshine. Not nurse's aide. LPN. Boy, she won't forgive me for that. And I have a son who works in Las Vegas.
Okay.
So I've got 4 boys and 1 daughter.
Uh-huh. Now, are they all as outgoing and go-getter like Clyde is?
No, but they've got equal talents.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're all talented. Of course, with parents like us, how could they?
Oh, I agree. Yes, I agree. You're a go-getter, and your dad was like that too.
Yes. And my mother, who turned 89 on Saturday.
Oh, she's still living.
She's
your mother
still
is?
living. Yes, she turned 89 on Saturday.
Well, happy birthday, Mrs. Rabideau.
Yeah.
She doesn't run a business or anything at 89, does she?
No.
That's a Rabideau that runs a store up the road here. We know that the trading post. Is that
Yes.
relatively yours too?
It's a district.
Got to be in
outfit.
here
Yes,
someplace.
it's in the
right?
book. Yes. Yes.
All right. So when you were living right here, when they went to school in Saranac, because this is the Saranac district.
No, this is Peru School District. And
Okay.
When we first moved here, we went to a one-room school. I mean, this was back in the.
But
40s.
I'm thinking of Clyde now. When Clyde went to school in Saranac, didn't
Right. We were living in West Plattsburgh.
he? Okay, there was a short period where you moved there.
Right.
All right. Because I know that I've heard about his wrestling, and we'll talk about that when we're in with him. Somewhere along the way, you got interested in genealogy.
Took me a long time.
About when was that? How long ago?
About 1987, I had my son Guy, who's the attorney, was going to McGill University in Montreal. And he loves to spend time in libraries. And he came across this book about the Robidoux brothers, a memorial to the Robidoux brothers. And it was about a Robidoux family who moved out west and helped settle the west. And of course, I've since learned a lot more about this family that went out west. And he copied about 10 pages, and it quoted of Joseph Robidoux from Montreal as saying there was only one Robidoux that ever came over to North America, and everyone was related. So he gave him the 10 pages that he copied, and he says, "Here, Dad," he says, "you might find this interesting." Well, of course, for 2 or 3 years I didn't. I didn't have time. January 1990, I had an opportunity to take a job with the Air Force in Ottawa, Canada. And of course, I was too close to research facilities and too close, and I had some extra time, and
In Ottawa,
I
yeah.
started.
Mhm.
And of course, I've been hooked ever since. So it was 1990, beginning of 1990 when I started.
Now, think about your grandfather. Do you remember your grandfather?
My grandfather was dead when I was born.
Oh, okay.
See, I didn't know any of my
All right,
ancestors.
because, you know, we wait sometimes until those people who could tell us this.
The biggest mistake we can make.
Exactly. You do it when they're around. And I think now that, and of course, now we have video cameras that my grandmother, my grandfather, and Champlain,
And
we
the
only
interesting
would have had
stories
that.
they have.
Absolutely.
And you remember parts of these interesting stories, but you don't remember that. You know,
Yeah.
it is so unfortunate that we don't get these before they they pass away.
Yes, and I guess that's a warning to you people out there, young people, that if you ever think you're going to be interested in genealogy, you start asking questions of your grandparents, your grandmothers, your mother and your father over the time.
Keep track of it. Keep a record of it.
Absolutely. I would assume that your children know your background and your grandparents. But when you never had a grandfather at all when you were growing up?
I remember my grandfather on my mother's side. He died when I was quite young, but he's the only and I remember my grandmother on my mother's side.
But you don't remember your grandfather when you were 10, 12? He was already passed away?
On my father's side, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. His name was Noel Rabideau from Altona.
How do you spell his? Rabideau, or did you change it along the way?
The name changes were not taken by the initiative of the people concerned. They were done by the priests or whoever maintained the records. That's how name changes occurred. But my great-grandfather was named Raphael Robidoux. By the time he was buried in Altona, his first name became Russell, and his last name was spelled Rabedeue on the headstone. I mean, that's how the name changes.
How long have the Rabideaus been in the area? Any idea when they
Yes.
first came?
I can tell you exactly.
Oh, God, good.
My great-grandfather, Raphael, came to Plattsburgh when he was 13 years old, and that was 1855. He got married at St. Pierre's Church, St. Peter's Church now. It was St. Pierre's back then. He got married on January 9th, 1860.
So he came to Plattsburgh area. Huh?
Right.
And there were no other Rabideaus around that you know
There were
of?
some. No, there were some others. But that was a generally early time for them to come.
Mhm.
Most of them came in the 1880s, 1890s.
Right.
But, yes, go ahead.
When we were talking, when I saw this book, one of the things I thought of course, is genealogy in general. A lot of people are interested. And when you talk about Rabideaus, nearly anybody out there, everybody nearly, is related in one way or another to a Rabideau. And particularly if you're from the Moores Forks, when we see there's 47 listings in the Moores Forks, part of the book of the Moores book, and the valleys and so forth, and Rabideaus marry Rabideaus, but different spellings sometimes, you know.
Yes, happened.
And
yes.
they're not closely related, but this is quite an undertaking you had here. Did you think of a book when you first started talking about genealogy?
No, my original intent was just to find my line, my history. That was my original intent. It soon became apparent. I think I did it all wrong. Normally, you should start with yourself and go backward. Well, I started with Andre, who came over in the early 1600s to Quebec.
So you didn't know whether you were related to him or not?
No.
Okay, you
No,
could
I
have
have
done a lot of work without anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I think the chase was as much fun as the finish. The finish.
You spent a lot of time doing this.
A lot of time. A lot of enjoyable time. This was not a burden. Traveled a lot. I went to every state in the union, except Alaska. I've not been to Alaska. I've talked with people in Alaska, but I've been to every state. I've met Robideaus. I walked into the Robideau Row Museum in St. Joseph, Missouri, and the director of the Historical Society, Roy Coy, took one look at me and he says, "You're a Robideau." Now this is thousands of miles away, years apart. He took one look at me and he says, "You're a Robideau." So that's, that was, but a lot of travel, a lot of enjoyment, a lot of meeting different relatives.
How did you learn how to do it? Who told you how to go out and do this?
I did it all wrong.
You
I did it all
wrong.
I did it all wrong. I could give really good advice to other people now on how to go about it, but I don't know if other people tried to give me advice and I didn't take it. Probably that was the case. That's one of my bad points, I think. But
is that a Rabideau trait?
I think so.
That's what
Of course,
it is.
this trait is not just exclusive to the Rabideaus, though. But I think it's one we've got.
I'm sorry that Mr. Rabideau is not an outgoing person here this morning. We really thought we were going to meet somebody that's outgoing and willing to talk. All right. It's nice of you to say that you didn't know what you were doing. It's like anything we do. We don't know what to do. We don't know who to talk to find out. You had nobody in your family that was interested other than your son?
I met a cousin in Massachusetts who was interested. And really, we collaborated for about a 6 or 8 month period on doing research. But other than that, no, there wasn't, there was not that much interest. I did talk to many of them across the country who were very interested and had their own small family history already done.
Did you ever check with the Mormon Church to see what they might have?
I used the Mormon Church extensively.
Right. Well, people out here say, why would you go to the Mormon Church?
But you don't go to the church. You go to one of they call stake centers. It's a research facility. They have microfilm of all of the church records, not Mormon. I'm talking Catholic Church and everything. And I used their research facilities extensively, both in Ottawa. I used them in Ottawa and Hawaii quite extensively.
Nobody, I don't think, in the world has more records than the Mormon Church.
Absolutely correct.
And it has to do with some of the beliefs of their church about their ancestors. And do you know the story on that?
I don't know the full story, no.
I don't, and I would probably be remiss if I tried to. All I can tell you is I understand that when your parents die, in order for them to get to the end promised land, someone has to research them for them to get out of, so forth, if you're Catholic, purgatory, to get to this final spot. And they believe it, and they've got files in Salt Lake City that are under mountains that could withstand, I'm told, an atomic bomb. They were down there with walls that are 12 to 16 feet thick, big vault doors and everything else. And they have their record. They have one in Plattsburgh now. I
got to tell you, you don't have to be a Mormon or a member, and they're extremely friendly and helpful. They've never once not been very helpful to me.
And now there's one in Montpelier area, and there's one down near Latham, and it's just a place to go if you're going to be starting out. And we're going to, talking about starting out, we're going to close right now, take another short break. We have a very important message we want you to hear. When you were gathering this information, it was for your own personal use as you travel across the state, or were you thinking of a book?
Very soon into the research, I thought of a book. Very soon into it, because I was gathering so much material, much more than my own mind. So there was, I did think of the book.
Okay. What did you do with the material as you gathered it? How did you write it out?
Put it on computer.
But right in the beginning, you wrote it all out, or did you have a copying machine?
Most facilities have copy machines, and I copied a lot of information, wrote down a lot of information, any way you could gather, copy if I could.
About every Rabideau.
Every Rabideau I came across.
Okay, now first of all...
Not only Rabideaus, every spelling of it.
All right, now that's what I was going to get into next. It wasn't just looking for Rabideau or Rabideau. In your book here, you talk about 42 different spellings, I think?
Yes, yes.
With a new one since that time, huh?
Several new ones.
Several new ones.
5 or 6 documented new ones since then.
Here are some of the, the variations of the name Rabideau. It's hard to believe that you never would have dreamed there were that many spellings.
No, it got so, I would say if it looked like a duck and it floated, it was a duck or it was a Rabideau
Yep.
or a Robideau.
I can remember one of my stepfather's sisters made a Rabideau, and it ended up, I think it was O-U-X, along the way. But they're all different spellings, and sometimes referred to as dit names. You ever heard that word?
Yes, yes.
Of course, dit names generally are something completely foreign to it. Rabideau would be known as a spear or something when you convert it. You know what the name Rabideau means?
It came from Robert. It was the names back in the 1600s or 13 or 1400s came from what you did, where you lived, or your first name. Robideau
Okay.
came from Robert.
Okay. I can see right now it's silly for me to say, have you any idea what something means? Obviously he has researched it so much that he can answer anything about the Rabideaus along the way. Are you this persistent when you do other projects that you get involved in, Clyde?
Unfortunately, yes.
Huh? You are, huh?
Unfortunately, yes. Well, I say unfortunately, but yeah, but this is like being a detective and finding and solving puzzles. I'll get a letter from somebody in Washington State or some other state, and they'll write, say, our name is spelled R-A-B-E-D-E-W. I think we're related. Someone told us we came from France and so forth. Well, I get right on it, and I connect them up.
You do?
Yes.
So this, not only has it been time to do, it must have got kind of expensive too. Just stamps alone, when you start to send you can send out a lot of letters.
I sent out thousands of letters for information, but I can tell you, for the most part, the information was I got from research centers, from town clerks, from historical societies, from genealogy societies, and so forth.
This might be a good time for your opinion what a person should do when he gets something in the mail, not from a commercial place that wants to sell you the history of your family, but when someone writes and says, I'm researching my family and would like to know something about yours. What should a person do?
They should respond. If it's from an individual, not
Right.
from a company.
Okay.
If it's from a company, it could be a sales gimmick. But if
Yeah.
it's from an individual who is looking, researching, by all means answer. You're going to find out as much information as what you give. I mean, it's...
All right. Even if you don't give him anything, write and tell him you don't want to give him anything.
Right.
It takes you off the list, right?
That's right. Respond.
You wonder if your mail ever gets received. I started years ago, and I made up a form letter, and I sent it to the Vens in Montreal. I got the Montreal phone book. I sent out about 30. The ones that have names that were like in my family, the Roberts, the Derricks, the Janes, the Henrys. And I never got one response. Not one out of 30-something. You wonder if it ever got delivered, but didn't come back. Must have been delivered. And not one. Now, probably they think I'm looking for an inheritance or something. I don't know what they're thinking. But
Well, generally the lack of knowledge, both on this side of the border and the other side of the border, about relatives who move in Montreal and around there, they have no idea the Rabideaus and so forth are Robideaus. Conversely, I didn't have any idea that 20 miles across the border that, we had relatives.
what section of Quebec were you from? Do you know? Your grandfather?
I believe, got married in Quebec City, and immediately moved down to the Montreal area, to Butcherville, and then gradually came down to the St. Constant area.
You see, when I was looking for mine, and my grandfather had died way back, my father died when I was very, very young, and I never knew the derivation of the name Ven or where they came from. And I met a young man up in Saint Jean who researched for me and found out that they had been up in Saint Jacques de Bancam up there since 1645.
Yeah.
Like that, and never stayed within that area, and I never within 80 miles.
I know
home,
that it's amazing not knowing our culture and our
Oh, yeah.
history and so forth. But we were too busy. Our parents and grandparents were too busy making a living to be,
Right.
I guess, to.
Well, okay, so you pick up this information and you were now thinking about a book. You brought it home and you put it in your computer, but you don't throw away the hard stuff, right?
No.
We older people, don't we want to keep that for
It's
sure?
in my attic.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
So where did you keep it at the time? In books or in file drawers?
In boxes,
In boxes.
in folders, labeled folders in boxes and so forth.
And then you get a change from somebody. You got to go find it and you got to bring it up to date.
Well, I go into the computer and change it at that point.
Okay, in the computer. All right. How long you been into computers?
When I went to Canada in 1990, I said to myself, Clyde, you're going to be computer literate. So within 3 or 4 months, I was computer literate.
On your own? You studied it
my
on your own? Huh?
Yeah. That's another fault us Rabideaus have. We do things on our own.
You do them on your own, huh?
We aren't good listeners.
Let me ask you this. When you're driving and you don't know where you are, do you ever stop and ask for directions?
Now I do.
You
All
do?
the time. Now I do.
You do?
But I didn't,
You didn't used to do that.
No, but now I do. I'm very. I was reluctant, like everybody else was, but now I do.
When did you get smart, Clyde, like this? When did you...
Hell, I can't remember.
You can't remember a lot, no way.
I can't remember. But I did get smart, and I do ask, because I go to so many strange cities,
Huh.
so many of them strange areas, and need to know where the church or the town hall is or where something is.
Now, not only do you remember what you did, but you remember names. You remember
yeah.
you remember times too. Do you have do you have a photographic memory or something?
I don't have a photographic memory, but I can tell you names. If someone calls me up on the phone and says, their ancestors were so-and-so, and I can tell them exactly where they're from and what,
Is that right?
Oh yeah, that's...
Is this your main hobby right now? Is this genealogy?
Well, genealogy and other stories. I also do, I've published a couple books on vital record information too, but it's a hobby, and it's my main hobby.
Have you made this book available outside the area?
Well, on Tuesday this week, we went to Montreal,
Mm-hmm.
and I took Michael Cody, and we were up there, and we pulled out a book, and yes, it's in the Montreal Library, for example.
Well, I would.
Most of the local libraries and genealogy societies have the book.
I can't believe with 1,500 copies you'd have any left, because you figure how many Rabideaus are right in the north area, and they're all over the United States, and they know that it's available. And by the way, folks, this is available, and I don't know how many pages. You know how many pages?
Over 500.
Yeah, there's 586, so nearly 600, full of information. $15, still $15?
Well, with the postage, it's $19 if it has to be mailed.
Okay, $19 with the postage. Unbelievable. I could not believe it. I have one and I'm not a Rabideau. I bought one with the idea from my brother-in-law, and I found out he already had one. He knew all about it, and because I heard about it from Don Rainville, your cousin. And we'll take another short break and come back and talk more about the book in general and the fun and problems. You must have laid awake a lot of nights thinking about this. We'll be back.
He's in a hurry to get this done, huh?
Ooh, yeah. You know how long it takes. All right, in the back of the book, we started off camera again, talking. Tell us about your trip to Utah while I find this.
Okay, 2 months ago, I went to Utah specifically to find the rock that was carved in 1837 by Antoine Robideau. He was building forts and trading with the Indians and the people going to California at the time. He and his family were extremely important in the settlement of the West. They had forts all over the Oregon Trail and other trails. Anyway, he carved a rock on one of his routes from one fort to another. It was in Westwater Canyon in the lower part of Utah. Well, the stone hadn't been found in 52 years. There was a picture of it in existence. I had one in the book. But I wanted to find it. I wanted to touch it. I wanted to touch history. And when I went to Delta, Colorado. There was a Kevin Rabideau there who I corresponded with, who's in the book, who was connected. And there was a Roland Robideau, both. And we had the coffee the night before. I went to the bookstore and so forth. Anyway, the next day we set out to find the rock. It was about 17 miles up the canyon, and I had 3 or 4 descriptions of where the stone was. So they varied within 4 or 5 miles from each other, and we found it.
Maybe stop you. How do you get 17 miles up the canyon? It's a long walk, or can you drive?
We drove on dirt roads.
You did? Okay.
Yes.
All right. I didn't mean to interrupt you here, but I'm going to forget that if I don't. You found the rock.
We found the stone.
Well,
Rock.
first of all, here is the picture of the stone that's in his book. Now, where did you get the picture? Remember? How you
No,
got
I don't.
it?
No, I
Okay.
don't remember.
You know, this reminds me, because he said it's been lost, nobody had seen it for 50 some odd years. I think I told you on TV before about in the post office, they had a class of kids, and they showed some of the most wanted that the FBI was looking for. And one of the kids said, I have a question. He said, what? He said, why didn't they keep him when they had his picture, when they took his picture, all right? So you would think that this, somewhere that they would have had someone would make a location exactly how to find this, longitude, latitude, or whatever.
Well, that's one of the points. I found on a topographical map the pinpointed location of it. But all the local people didn't know it was there. In fact, they were so excited about it at this bookstore, they tried to find it the next morning before we got there, but they couldn't find it.
Maybe they don't give a damn either because they're not Rabideau.
Oh, they care.
They did, all right.
I told them I promised to go back and let them know if I found it. The next night I went back to the store and he says, you didn't find it, did you? I said, oh yes, we did. But I knew that they had gone earlier that morning and tried to find it. But no, they were very interested in it.
Probably wanted to help you to find it and be able to say, here it is, Mr. Rabideau, without you having to find it for yourself.
They didn't know about this history within their myths. It's like us, you know. There's a lot of history around here that we're not aware of.
You have a picture, an actual picture now.
Yeah, this
right
is.
here.
I don't know how it come out on camera.
Well, see if I can hold this so Calvin can see it. Now, obviously, there were at least 3 people with you because, or did you take that with the camera just sitting on a rock?
No, it was Kevin Rabideau and his wife and I.
Kevin is on the right,
Right.
and
He lives in Delta,
Clyde is on the
Colorado.
left. Okay. All right.
30 miles from this location, 40 miles from that location, in the town of Delta, Colorado. I took a picture of this sign. The town of Rabideau.
So are you going to have something like this in your next book?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, stories and pictures like this.
Mm-hmm. Now, I understand in the back of this book, they aren't all things that you're happy to put on TV and everything else about some of the Rabideaus. Some have been found on trees or posts or end of ropes.
Absolutely.
Is that right?
The last, well, there's an interesting little story. I'll get into it just briefly here. The last hanging in Montana was of Frank Rabideau. I think it was in the 1930s. He was hung for murder. It turns out he came from Plattsburgh.
Oh, get out.
No, I further researched the story, and he and his brother murdered 2 people in Beekmantown and were put in Dannemore prison. He was transferred to Auburn and escaped from Auburn. And so when he went to Montana, he didn't change his habits, and he was caught and
Is
hung.
that in this book? And that way,
No,
I'm not sure. No, okay.
no, it's not
I
in
knew
it.
there was
This is-
something Don had told
This
me.
is research since that book has been published.
That's going to be in there too, in your new book.
Yes,
All right.
yes.
This town of Rabideau, where was that? Did you say?
That's in Delta, Colorado, which is about 40 or 50 miles from where the stone is. But they had a trading post and so forth in that area. And he had a fort. They've rebuilt the fort, and it's a tourist attraction in Delta, Colorado now.
How did you find out about that? How would you find out about something in Delta?
I don't know how I found out about it, but it was a part of my research material.
Uh-huh.
I've written at many historical societies and so forth, so I knew generally it was there.
Have you ever put an ad in papers outside the areas asking for information? No.
No, but I've written genealogy societies, historical societies, and so forth asking.
Have you made this available to most of the societies across the country?
No, quite a few in New England, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and so forth that I belong to that have it, but.
A few that you belong to a few of them.
Well, I belong to several genealogy societies. I belong to one in St. Joseph, Missouri, the Historical Society, and some in Minnesota, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and so forth.
This is an unsolicited testimonial now. Wouldn't you like to be retired from the U.S. federal government where you could have enough cash to run around all the country like this and belong to all these societies? I say that because I'm also retired from the federal, so I can say that. It's
Oh,
okay.
okay. You know that's not just,
No, it's
just
not
a
true.
retirement
No,
payment.
it's how well you use it.
Yeah, and it's how good you maintain your health and,
Yeah.
and
You drive when you go around these various
yes.
places, huh?
I,
And you're by yourself.
in the past 2 months, I put 12,000 miles.
Well, no, we're very fortunate to find you here, then, aren't we?
No, I'm fortunate to be here. I love
Yeah, but I mean,
this.
to not on one of your trips. You
Well,
know?
I'm leaving for Hawaii next week.
I heard you were
For
going
2
to
weeks.
what? John told me that. I said, have you been there? I said, no. I called him and you were very receptive to it. And I told Calvin, and we're very busy. I'm not that busy. Calvin is very busy. And time kind of just goes along on you. And he told me you were going to be gone and gone for a couple of weeks and come back. We would be nice to have met your wife, but we figured we better get you while we can right now. We don't know what's going to happen. All right. And where else have you been this summer?
I've been to Wyoming. I've been to Nebraska.
You find Rabideaus in all those places?
Oh yes, yes, yes. And not only find Rabideaus, there's historical places there. There's Cott's Bluff, for example. There's an old fort and pass, that Robidoux Pass, and so forth.
Are any of those Rabideaus sociable enough to invite you to their house to eat?
Oh yes, yes.
They do. Huh?
Yes. Well, and drink.
And drink too.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's probably what.
I wasn't going to mention that.
Well,
they do that too.
Oh, yeah, they'll have a glass of wine, sure.
Any of them from the east that you met? You think they all came from the east to get out there?
Well, I know where they came from. Most of them came through Plattsburgh. Most of them, when they write and say they have a New York connection, I can find some place in Clinton County where they at least had one or two childs, their ancestors, that before they moved on.
Uh-huh.
This was one of the routes south, and the St. Lawrence River. I mean, this was the two areas where they went south.
There was a big immigration from the French coming down here in the 1850s through 1870. A
Yes.
lot of them came down here. There weren't the jobs up there. They came into this area. I think they told their relatives, come on down here. I think the Vens came down here about 1862, 63. That's when they first came down. We were looking up the other day in a book that just the Society at Keysville just published. Barbara Seguin had an awful lot to do with it, from St. Mary's Church in Champlain. And they were up until 1899, it was 1860 to 1899, there's no Baychards in there. Can you imagine no Baychards in a town in Champlain?
There wasn't?
They weren't here yet, I guess.
The
Must have come just around the turn of the century.
The church in Cooperville, or known as Carbo Creek, was one of the first in the area.
Yes, but and there is a if you ever go in that church, there used to be a statue up front, and it had a list of all the people who donated, and it said so and so. Let's say Antoine Baychard. Then they had ditto marks, just the first names, about 12 or 15 of them, right on down to Baychard. But so things change. Families come in groups, right? You can go into Canada, look in several of the books like this, talking about a community. There won't be one Rabideau. And then all of a sudden you get another one and it's loaded with them, like Fort Forks.
Generally, when you go across the border, the French sort of stay together and the English sort of stay together. They don't commingle that much.
We had an occasion this past week where Monday for Canada Day, we were in Clarenceville. Very English loyalists, we found out up there, the beautiful old homes. And the first 5 or 6 people I talked to were Lewis, Adams, Miller. And I said, I thought I was in Canada. I thought there'd be some Fortans and Levecs and so forth. We're going to take another short break, and we'll be right back and find out exactly what happened when this started and how many times he got discouraged. When you meet a man like Clyde Rabideau, you find that between the takes we're doing here, there's also a lot of conversation going on.
Yeah.
We always do, of course. We try not to say anything that you got to repeat later because there's something that's missing when you repeat it. It's always good the first time. Okay, there came a time in 1990 you said, I'm going to make a book so that other people will find it a lot easier to find out what you took a lot of work to do. How did you get it, so many names, and how did you do this?
Well, of course, the research took, was ongoing all the time I was in Canada. Until 1992, June of 92, when I transferred to Hawaii, which was my final place where I worked for the federal government, I had done research. And I knew I was going to do a book sometime, but never, still doing research. I got to Hawaii, and continue to do research at the local stake center, Mormon Stake Center in Hawaii, and always talked about it doing my book. I met who's now my wife, Gail, and she says, well, write the book, do the book, finish the book. So she said it enough that I finally did. So in 1993, of course, once you finish a book, there's a lot more to do besides you got to publish it, you got to get it printed, you got to have it done. So I contacted a firm in Michigan, and got the cost, what it would cost to do it, and I had 1,500 books printed up. Well, that was the beginning.
It's a big outlay of money to start with, huh? You know.
A large outlay.
And you said, who in the heck's going to buy 1,500 books?
I didn't say that. All my friends and relatives said that.
Oh, you didn't say it.
I didn't say it. I had confidence I was going to sell them, but my friends and relatives did. I mean, what are you doing, investing that much money? But after the book was published, then I had to let the people know it was there. Well, I sent out thousands of letters to Rabideaus, and so forth throughout the United States, and people who were related to Rabideaus. And the word started to spread. And the sale of the books began and it started. And of course then it was, you'd get the order, you'd have to package it up.
Oh yes, a lot of work.
The work was, continued. But every time they ordered a book, I got more information. I mean, once...
You mean you asked them to send you information?
Oh, sure. I'd put a couple sheets in the book. I said, send me the more information on your line that's not in the book. And
well, all right, now, someone out there saying, what good is that? The book's already published. What do you want more information for?
Well, I'm in the process of publishing 2 more books connected with the Rabideaus. One about stories and anecdotes and so forth. That's the one I'm really working on. Plus, in about 3 or 4 years from now, I'll publish another book. If I can get it all into one book, and probably it's going to have to be 2 volumes of all the Rabideaus that I've connected up.
There's a lot of the children that weren't in these books,
well,
right?
Not children necessarily. Lines of Rabideaus that I hadn't connected. I mean, I've connected thousands. When I say connected to the original Andre Down since the book was published.
I hope that's more than just up here.
No, it's all on computer and it's all. No, it's not. No, it's more than up there.
Yes.
It's more than up there.
You must have heard $15 is a steal for this book, right?
Like I said, I don't know if I said it before, but this is for enjoyment. This was not for money.
But you like to get your expenses back.
I've made the cost of the book. The cost of the book for printing the book was about $15. Mm-hmm. So the $15 plus the postage, I get my money back on the book.
Well, you must be like other people. You're vain, and it's nice to know that all over the United States
of
it
course.
says Clyde M. Rabideau on there, right?
Sure.
What's M for?
Morris? Melvin.
Melvin. I thought it was Morris.
I don't often tell that.
Well, I just thought does that mean that Junior's also?
Yes.
Melvin?
His nickname is Mel. In the family,
Mel,
he's known as
that's why
Mel.
you're known as Mel. That's it, right there. Okay.
Sure. He's really going to appreciate this.
We'll ask him when we go there. If you don't hear about it in the meantime. Well, maybe he'll see yours before you see some of his. He had some good shows there as he made the tours around the city of Plattsburgh.
He's doing good. I'm really proud of him.
I'm sure you are. And he's very proud of you when I talked with him about you, too.
Oh, good.
You found a new spelling, I heard, since the book was published.
Well, several of them, but the most recent was about 3 weeks ago. It was Rabideau.
Rabideau, D-E-W, yeah.
And after them writing me and me doing some research, I found out their great-grandparents were born in Clintonville, New York. Keysville really, but the only Catholic church at the time was in Clintonville.
Hard to believe that you say most of them passed through here. As they
most of them passed through here.
West. Many times when they came in here, I understood, talking with some people, they came in here in the 1860s, 70s, and then the work wasn't plentiful enough, so they went to where there were, Massachusetts got a lot of them where the well, you must have learned that as you went.
I was down in Boston Monday of this week, finding more information on Rabideaus and so forth. More French in Massachusetts than you would ever imagine.
Oh, yes. That's, a lot of them ended up in Massachusetts. The genealogical
Incidentally,
society,
they kept the original spelling with the X on it. Most of them in Massachusetts is spelled R-O-B-I-D-O-U-X.
I think that's the way, although I think my uncle there was R-A-B, but O-U-X, Now the Supernaws, some of the Supernaws spell it N-A-W.
Let me talk about the Supernaws.
Oh, are they related to the Rabideaus? They gotta be.
When Andre got married in the 1600s,
Andre is the first one over here.
first Robidoux over.
Yeah.
When he died at the age of 35. His wife remarried a Supernov. And all of the Supernovs that we know are descendants from that marriage. So they're, she remarried a Supernov. So all the Supernovs are descendants from that marriage back in the 1600s.
They've got a lot of spelling variations.
Yes.
They got that S-U-R-P, which, you would say, why is there an R, but S-U-R-P. Tisha Supernov, that we met at the senior celebration, one of those fine singers from the Moores Elementary School. Her grandfather is Mose Supernov. You know Mose?
I've heard of the name.
Mose is a car dealer up there that sells cars and so forth. Okay, so that you sent this to Michigan, you said, right?
It was printed in Michigan, yes.
All right. In the meantime, you gave them all the information, or did you put it page by page?
I put it page by page. I printed up the pages.
Where did you ever get this system of
Coding?
coding? That is something else.
I came up with that, and I've got a lot of compliments, some criticism, but a lot of compliments. I had to find a way to keep track of 13 generations, and that's what we're talking about. How would you know at the 13th generation how your line went back, unless you had a particular code that you could go back? Well, it took me a while, but I had to come up with something. I didn't want just, throw the names in there like you would find in some of the books. They had to have a way of connecting back, and that's what I came up with.
Well, give you an example here. If you can see this in here, Calvin. The code is 10E 3 small e 7 F 1 A 4 F parenthesis 2, and that would tell you by going inside from that they go back to 9, 8 backwards, right?
That is the 10. The 10 means it's a 10th generation. The first number is always a generation.
It was number 1.
From Andre was number 1.
Okay.
That 10 is 10th generation.
Okay. And if you got any other 10 E's, they're right directly in that line,
Right,
correct?
right. I am a 10E.
Okay. Then they go right on down. And now, for instance, if you look in here, the wife's last name, you see right here, then. The first thing you do when you look in any book, see if your name's in it, right? And there's Lillian, married to Everett, 1943. That's my half-sister, just my sister, Lillian, who's now passed away. And Everett, my brother-in-law, is the unofficial mayor of Champlain Park on Cumberland Head, 1943. And then if you go follow through to number 11, it would give his children, right?
That's
It'd
correct.
be his children. If everything else is the same, except it's 11, that would be his children.
That's right.
And it takes a while.
It surprised me. You figured out the code.
Oh, yes, I did. I went through here, and you take any given name, it's 11, and then it shows their children, and you go right on down. Now these are the children of number 10. And the amount of work involved in this has got to be.
Yeah.
You never have any idea of number of hours you've spent on it?
No. I spent a lot of nights sitting at the computer. I'd wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning and sit on the computer and do some work.
Right. But a labor of love, right?
Oh, yes. This was not, I use the term work loosely. You're right, it is a labor of love.
It's got to be, because otherwise you look at this right here. Here we are, right here. This is it. Castine, Laura, that's my aunt. And there's Herman Rabideau. He's 10E, 3A, so he's in the same generation as you. They were married in 1933. That's my father's sister, my stepfather's sister. And other names as you could go through. You don't have to be a Rabideau.
There's also a Castine.
Oh, wait, Castin and Castingay. Now, Castingay is another name for gay. That's a dit name for the word name gay. Now, here's Julie Castin, married to Francois Xavier, 1831. Where would you get something that old? Out of a record someplace, more likely?
The records in Quebec are phenomenal.
Yes.
The church has kept extremely good records in
Catholics, particularly. Catholic
Yes.
ones. Oh,
Well,
yes, yes.
Quebec. Yeah. It's very easy to get information in Quebec.
But the computer can set this up for you, right? Like this. You put it in and you push the button and it.
Well, yeah.
Medical
Once I
order.
put it in, yes.
There's the
Not
last
quite that
names.
simple, but
See, here's the last name, the way the spellings are, and the wife's last name, which are not in alphabetical order. This is by husband, the other one's by wives. So you can look up if your family married a Rabideau anywhere. You don't have to look for your wife, but your sister or whatever. I mean, your relative, the female, until you find their names, look in alphabetical order. And they're all exactly reversed. No errors at all in this book.
I'd like to say yes, but I think I've noticed a couple, but
Someone told me, I'm not in there. I don't understand. It's not complete. I'm not in there. I said, well, did you ever get a letter from Mr. Rabideau asking for information? They said, yes. And I said, what'd you do with the letter? He said, threw it in the wastebasket. I said, then you'd wonder why he doesn't have it in there? I mean, he knew you were here, but why did he get the information? Unless one of your brothers or sisters come back, you won't know about that person.
that's correct.
So that's what your new book's going to contain. Those people maybe who now said I should have given you the information before.
That plus new lines entirely, new lines that go from the 17 or 1800s that just they were not connected at all.
Will the new one be a continuation of this?
No, it'd be a completely new one.
And it'll be interspersed with these?
Yes, yes.
Oh, so it won't be it'll be a complete new book, bigger, 2 volumes or something?
Unless I make this print smaller, it probably is going to have to be 2 volumes.
2 volumes, absolutely.
But and that's my final. When I get to that point, 3 or 4 years, I mean, I say final, but I want to complete this. I mean, you could go on forever. I've got to die someday,
I know
so
that.
I want to finish this.
You put that off as long as possible, though.
What, the death part?
The death part?
I'm going to put it off forever.
We saw over here in this picture, this sign that says the town of Rabideau, and Antoine Rabideau, look at here, A-N-T-O with a small I-N-E, Rabideau. Their name is down for a long, till that wears out. In the same way, the name Clyde Rabideau on the front of a book like this is forever, so to speak. And that's a nice legacy to leave for your children and for their children.
For my family, yeah.
For your family.
Right.
And I'm sure your ancestors ahead, as they look down, some of them must have gone to heaven, some of those Rabideaus, right? There's got to be a few of them, huh?
Some, yes.
You didn't know we were going to talk like this, did you, when we got here, huh?
Well, some of us are good people. Some of us go up there.
We'll be right back. We are watching Hometown Cable. We're talking with Clyde M. Rabideau, talking about some of his life, his hobbies, and, of course, the Rabideaus in the North Country. A lasting book, something should be in every library, probably is, and it's certainly all the genealogy libraries. The picture that we have on the screen is, tell us who this is.
That's my great-grandfather and great-grandmother, Raphael and Euphemie. They were both Rabideaus. They're the ones who were married in Plattsburgh in 1860.
And they were Rabideaus before they got married, both of them were.
Both of them were, yes.
And don't know how close they were related.
No, I don't.
She was an Indian, you said?
Well,
you think?
I think she was part Indian. We were always told, as we were being brought up, that we were part Indian. And a lot of the correspondence I get, well, I was always told it was Indian in our family. Or St. Constant was next to an Indian reservation, is next to one.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a good possibility that she could have been part Indian. Back in those days, when the French got married in Quebec, and they were going to marry an Indian, the church gave the Indian a Christian name. So it's very difficult to go back and document whether the person was Indian, part Indian or not.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if we were talking on camera or off, and that's why it's bad to talk off camera too much. You were mentioning about I guess it was on the Catholic Church in Canada is very, we mentioned that on camera, I think, have a lot of records, and it's very easy to trace back your name once you get into the right general area, And we've got a very good genealogical index down here in Keysville, in the Northern New York Canadian American Genealogical Society, in what was the old school across from the Catholic Church there in Keysville. You can get down there, that's open, I think weekends, I can't give you the hours, a lot of information. Have you been there?
I belong to it. It's open on Wednesdays and Saturdays.
There you go, okay. And very active down there, there's a lot of information. We're getting new books all the time. We have your book down there, obviously.
Yes.
Should be. And it's a good place to start if you're looking for something. And again, the main place, the Smithsonian of genealogy, is the Mormon Church.
Absolutely.
No question about that.
It-
And many times what you want is already prepared. You know,
And there's a couple other good places to reach in this area. In Montreal, you got the Quebec Archives on Mullen Street in Montreal, and the main library on Sherbrooke. Two extremely good places to do research.
have you ever gone up there with anybody else that's in research where they're checking a different name, where you get some ideas from he or him, he or her?
No.
No?
No.
Did you ever talk to many people as to what you can gather and how you should gather it? Did you do it all on your own?
I did it on my own. I'm not
Another
saying
mistake?
Another mistake, sure.
Another
mistake.
Yeah.
We learn by our mistakes. That's probably why
Do you learn by your mistake?
Absolutely.
You're one of the few ones.
That's why I stop and ask directions now
Yeah,
when
you do.
when I get lost. So yeah, I do learn by my own mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
I make enough mistakes, so I should be fairly smart. If that sounds
Do
reasonable.
we, if we get anybody out there who's got any comments about that, we'll be glad to accept any of those comments as to whether he is or not. Family not included.
Oh, okay.
You say you're going to maybe make one book with different letters you received and unusual things you
Stories.
picked up. Pictures, maybe like this, right?
Yes, stories.
What is this picture?
This picture is of a Katie Rabideau, half Indian.
Right?
Now, of course, when the book was published, I didn't have her connected. I now have her connected up. I've got it documented. I have a picture of her at her 100th birthday. Led a very interesting life. I've got a story that was written at her when she died at 101. Very interesting woman. This is the Sioux.
Mm-hmm. Where this picture is a real old picture. Where'd you pick up something like this?
Someone sent me the postcard, and I sent to the postcard company and got a group of the postcards that I now use.
Born 1890, so that's 1898 picture.
Yeah.
So you're still getting things in?
I'm into researching the Indian part, the Indian descendants. There are reservations out west now. One comes to mind, the Oto Indian Reservation. Many, many Rabideaus. With a variation of spelling again.
Yeah.
But,
Go ahead.
but several of the French, this Joseph Rabideau family, married Indians. So many of the descendants are Indian.
How will you know when you're ready to go to press? How are you going to know when you're done? Because you
won't know.
never are done.
That's a good question. You won't know unless you finally say, that's it. That's it.
Yeah. And you're not like that type of person.
No, I keep wanting to get more information because the more I find, the more you want to find.
Because this interview, unlike many others you've done, will continue into tomorrow. We'll be staying overnight. Clyde will be staying overnight. You know, you offered me coffee, but it got to be more than that before I go to bed tonight.
After this is over,
After
so
this is
is
over.
probably an incentive to get it over.
It's very possible that some of the people watching this are in Plattsburgh, New York. There's a possibility this could show on Falcon. If it is, we say hello to all the Rabideaus and we ask your forgiveness to any comments I might have made so far.
No, it's good.
There's a Rabideau, of course, that runs the one store out on Cumberland Head. That's my nephew out there, Brian, running the store, along with his brother's a partner in that. They're on the main corner.
It's not difficult to find a Rabideau in Clinton County.
It sure isn't, huh?
No.
And if you want to find one and you can't, be careful who you're talking to, because you may be talking about one of their relatives. That
Correct.
happens a lot, huh?
Yes.
What's the main spelling in the area? The way you spell it?
Yes.
R-A-B-I-D.
That's most of it came through Clinton County was R.A. Now, if you came through Essex County and St. Lawrence River, it's either R.U. or R.O. at the beginning.
Okay.
See, the priests and the keeper of records and so forth would determine how, phonetically, how the spelling would come about.
You know, someone mentioned that to me. They said, you went to school, and they said, Rabideau, how do you spell your name? I said, I don't know, just got to school. And they said, well, all right, it's R-O-B-I-D-E-O.
That's your name?
That's your name. They go home, and he says, Dad, you don't know how to spell your name? I know how. R-O-B-D-E-A-U, and that's the way it became.
That's exactly
that simple.
Yeah.
The way it happens, and along the way, and that's why names are changed. The families in the area that are called Van, V-A-N-N, are my grandfather's brother was one under the name of Van because it was easier to spell. They didn't know whether you should pronounce it Veni, Veen, and different things, so he changed it to V-A-N-N. That's very easy. That's the way it happened. You have no idea when these new books are coming out.
Oh, it would be at least 3 or 4
3 or
years.
4
now.
years.
Well, the book about the stories, I expect probably next year or the year after.
Okay, now that will be of interest to a lot of people other than
You
Rabideau.
won't have to be a Rabideau
No,
to be
just
interested in that.
good reading, and there'll be a lot of pictures.
Anecdotal stories and pictures and so forth. Some of the stories I'm writing myself about growing up in upstate New York, but
About your growing up.
sure.
Continuation of this program.
Cutting ice in on Shaji Lake with a crosscut saw, with one handle taken off, bringing it to the ice house when I was young.
And this book will be 101% true.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Or what people told you.
My memory. Right, or as my memory is.
All right. You think it's just going to be a sizable book, Clyde?
I would say probably 300 pages.
Okay. You're thinking of going back to the same printers, right? Probably.
Very
They did
good.
an
Yes,
excellent
I
job.
was very
They did
happy.
this is a well put together book. Well put together. All right. If someone wanted a book like this, they could make. Of course, if you're up north, I guess you talk to Cecile Lapierre, right?
Yeah.
This is Donald Lapierre. And she's a. How's she related to you?
She's a Rabideau.
First cousin.
No, I think it's about a fourth cousin.
Okay. Yeah, she's one of the Rabideaus up there. Rainey Rabideau.
Very, very nice
upstate
person,
family.
and very interested in the book. And she's my best salesman. I don't have salesmen, but boy, she is a very good salesman.
Okay, that would be one. And otherwise, you're not in the phone book, are you?
Yes, I'm in the
Oh,
phone book.
are you now? Okay.
They can write to me at 722 Irish Settlement Road,
Okay.
Plattsburgh, New York 12901.
Okay. And if all else fails, there's a guy in Plattsburgh with the same name, and he can tell you how to reach his dad. He can tell you how.
Yes.
You certainly know where he is most of the time. Huh?
Right.
All right. We'll take another short break, and we'll come back and see where we're going to go from here. Maybe it's some interesting anecdotes when you were putting this book together and some things that happened and so
Okay.
forth. We'll be right back. I assume we've already lost some of our watchers who don't care for genealogy, but there's more than genealogy involved in our talk. We're talking about it with a very interesting man here, one that's not unfamiliar to you, if only the connection is with the mayor or one of his other sons. A very interesting person, and anyone who worked for the government for 37 years got to have a strong constitution.
I agree. I agree.
You mentioned you went back and you found Andre Rabideau, R-O-B-I-D-O-U, 1643-16, born in Burgos, Spain. You can find that in the old records.
Yes.
But then you're talking here about he was part Spanish, of dark complexion, and it was sometimes called the Spaniard. Where would you find that?
L'Espagnol. It's in the records in Quebec. Yeah, I mean, he was dark complected. His mother was Spanish. He was born in the Basque region of Spain.
You never went back to try to get into Spain at all.
I tried to get into France. I've corresponded with one Robidoux in France, but got no additional information from correspondence.
He died at 35, and it says here, well, for instance, he was employed by Eustace Lambert, a prominent interpreter, settler, and fur trader. Well, that's where your father got his fur trading. Employees were paid 10 cents a day with board and lodging. That was in the record too.
That's in the record too. That's in the record.
And after he died in 1678, and you got to remember, that is 300 years ago. And you know, even though the United States, we think of things as 100 years old being old, it's not, right?
No.
Not when you leave the United States. She married Jacques Supernant, there's the Supernant you mentioned, of Perche, France, in La Prairie. And they had 3 sons and 4 daughters, and are the ancestors of the Supernants in North America. What I have found in checking the genealogy in my own family, I wish I knew that much about each of my great-grandfathers and great-grandfathers. It's hard to find that information.
Yes, it is. But I share your interest. I would love to know. I have walked on ground that's been walked on by my great-grandfather. Just wondered what was he thinking, why he did this, and so forth.
Yep.
Times were difficult back in the 1800s when they immigrated down here. You know, but just to know that you're, you know.
Exactly. And none of this was any interest to you until your son started this, right? You didn't care, really? Talk about your grandfather, you'd hear it and go out in one ear and out the other, probably.
Listen, my family really didn't talk about that, you know, one generation back, but they never did.
Yeah.
I don't think my father even knew more than 2 generations back.
You see, with your grandfather dying young, and my grandfather had died, my father died when I was 3 and a half. So I didn't really know him, and I used to buy things at garage sales that had to do with barbering, because my father had been a barber in the city of Plattsburgh. He was a very prominent barber and a horseman, and anything I could even that might have been his made me feel good. And and I don't know when that started, you know, but when you get older, we're getting close to the other end. We think about it more. We think about it. And I often wish I knew what my great-grandfather, where he had lived, what he had done, other than just being a farmer.
I was 2 weeks ago. I went up to Alder Bend, where my great-grandfather Raphael, my grandfather Noel, and my father Medor were all born. And the house, the old log house, is still standing, barely standing, but still there. Still there. It's on the Cherry Road in Alder Bend, and I took a picture of it. But you know, just to know that that's the roots, that's the place.
Right. Now, it isn't too hard to find which house it would be when you get to Alder Bend. Huh? There aren't too many you could get wrong houses.
Well, there's a lot of Rabideaus still in Alder Bend.
Yeah, but there aren't many houses how many people in Alder Bend?
Oh, I don't know, but there
But
were
a lot of Rabideaus.
there were a lot of people back in the 1800s. That was a busy place.
Why? You know?
They had sawmills, they had kilns, charcoal kilns. My great-grandfather was a collier.
Asheries, I think they call them. Isn't that something different? I think the charcoal things were called asheries.
They were mounds about 40 feet in diameter. They'd made charcoal. Well, he tended one of these, and he was called a collier. This is on the census records and so forth. They were paid $1.20, I think, for a 10-hour day. Or $1.10 or $1.20 a day for a 10-hour day. But that was after, when he moved down to Clinton County, he went from Keysville to Malone to several different places until about 1870 he settled in Alder Bend, and that's where he was the rest of his life. And he was a collier.
Let me ask you a dangerous question. All right?
Dangerous?
Dangerous here. Would it be possible if somebody sometime was just looking, not for a name, but for a way to do something to give you a call?
That's not
Are you
dangerous.
welcome for that?
Absolutely. I'd love. One thing about when you get in genealogy, you get so you love to help people
Help
connect.
other people.
You get just much satisfaction about helping other people.
I wish you'd have done the same, right?
Yes. Wish I had been smart enough to do the same.
Okay, because you know there's an easy way to do things and there's a hard way. He did it the hard way.
Right.
You just run out. You don't have any idea, and it's so simple sometimes. But someone's got to give you a clue. There are a lot of people interested in genealogy, and Clyde said that would be all right to call you. You don't want calls from the same person every night, but certainly if you have a problem, not about any particular person, but about a way to do something, you would be acceptable to that.
Area code 518.
Oh, he's going to give you the number.
563-9154. Be glad to help.
9154. There you go.
563-9154.
Okay. And he goes to bed by midnight. I don't know what you can do then. The other night I go to bed late. And believe it or not, I got a call at 1:25 a.m. asking me for information. Because I know I'm up and near my phone at that hour.
You didn't hang up on the person?
No, I did not. No, because they know I'm there, and I do. I'm a helpful person in what I can do. I'm very pleased to do it. Hometown Cable is ready to do anything for people, and we hope that people out there who like Hometown Cable got to remember that I'm retired and so is he, and we can run around and we can spend money, and we don't look for the next dollar. But Hometown Cable is not like that. They depend on their advertisers and people like yourself who are watching to become patrons to Hometown Cable. So why don't you, while you're thinking of it right now, if you're enjoying this and the other shows that we do, things that I'm not involved with at all the ball games that Calvin does, all of the meetings, send $12 or more once a year. He can use it, he'd appreciate it, and it will help keep Hometown Cable on the air. 1477 Ridge Road, Champlain, New York, 12919. We're not there today. We're on the Irish Settlement Road, an old road, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Why is it called the Irish? The Irish came here.
Apparently, but I think you got me at a loss on this one.
You don't care. We're French. We don't want to know why.
Well, yes, I want to know why it doesn't, but I just
never got to that yet.
No, I don't know why it's called.
It has to have been back when the Irish were here. Obviously, they weren't always wanted in every place they went. They were not.
Well, the French weren't necessarily always wanted either.
No, well, you know, in Plattsburgh you have a French church and an Irish church, right?
Not just in Plattsburgh, almost all the areas.
I think little Keysville has two.
I mean, St. John the Baptist was the Irish church, and St. Peter's or St. Pierre's was the French.
Yeah, for many years here, and I guess it still is. Although now you can go where you want.
Yeah.
We can go where we want. We were mentioning it wasn't hard for you once you found Andre to go down the line to his children. When did you find out that you were in that lineage? You remember? Is that a bad question? You know which?
No, it's not, it's a good question, but I don't know if I got an answer.
Oh, okay.
It was probably a year, or very close to a year after I started.
You see, when I went back checking and I couldn't find anything, it turned out that the man found out that when my 12th generation back came over from France, the name was Voyer. Nothing to do with Venne at all. Then they changed to Veine. They went to Vann. They went to other spellings. And I later found people in other areas when I'm looking in books like this that are spelling it that way that never changed it over. But it's the same name. Dead names.
That's the same thing as this.
Right.
You know, the changing names, some didn't change it, some did.
Okay. We're talking with Clyde Rabideau. We're going to be, I guess, winding up here. Anything else, Calvin? Let's take a break and we'll be right back. We were off quite a bit of time the last break. This man is more amazing than I thought. Not only does he make this Rabideau book, which we were going to talk just in general, maybe we will, a couple things in here, but in addition to that, he shows me some other things that he has published. Vital Statistics, Clinton Frank, and Ethics. Births, marriages, anniversaries, obituaries, compiled and published by Clyde M. Rabideau. What is this? Tell us now on camera.
That's a copy of all the obituaries, the marriages, anniversaries, and births that are in the Plattsburgh Press for each year. That one there you've got is a 1993.
Right. What you have is...
there are indexes and plus the actual article.
These are the articles out of the papers with the obituaries. Now, I didn't know this existed. So my first question is, what's this going to cost me to get one of these every year? And his answer, you won't believe this, is...
I don't sell them. I do up 20 of them and I donate them to genealogy societies and libraries in the area.
Francis Lefebvre, Barbara Abbey, Joseph LeBombard, Saranac Lake, Sister Mary Bernadette. I remember when she passed away. Just looking here very quickly for Arnold Lapeer. Looking for a name that I recognize from our area. Quickly. It just go on and on here. Amelia M. St. John's in West Shazy. So it's in here. And this is available in the Plattsburgh Library. So if you're looking for some information and you didn't get a copy out of the paper at the time, stop. Now this is only from, you started this in 93.
Started in 93. I've published 93, 94. I'm in the process of publishing one for 95.
And the reason that is because he got more interested in remember we mentioned 1990, and he wasn't here. He was traveling, he was working at his full-time job. And are you pretty confident you got most of them here? Everything that was published, right?
Well, yeah, everything that was published, yes.
And when you say Franklin and Essex, you don't mean that you went to any papers.
No.
If they're not in the Plattsburgh paper, they're not in here.
Right. Plattsburgh,
Okay.
The Plattsburgh paper their policy has been to publish the 3 county
Okay.
vital
Now,
statistics.
The people who are looking for things are going to bang themselves on the head that this wasn't done in 92 or 91 or 90.
Or 1950.
Or 1950 and all the things they're looking for. But there has to be a Ross Gordon and more. It's got to be a beginning, and there's going to be an end. But I'm surprised someone else hasn't done this commercially.
I am too. 80, 90 years from now, people will die for some. I mean, this will be
Oh, of course.
such a gold mine for.
But they're going to want the year before or the year after your last one, you know. But it's just a tremendous thing. You've got to be a genealogist or looking for information, 93, 94. And just in his other spare time, the Varens in North America. And why do you have this?
My mother is a Varon, and I published that for 88th birthday last year.
We just heard she's 89, and it's got all the information just like he had for the Rabideaus.
Yep.
And the story. When you got back, now how far can you go back and talk about your relatives? For instance, Your father you know about, you were there. Your grandfather had died on the Rabideau before you were born, I think you said.
Yes.
Were you able to find out much from your parents about him? Did you ever ask your mom or dad about it?
Yes, I did. My father died in 1988, and probably that was the incentive for me to get into publishing the book on the Robideaus and Rabideaus. But yeah, I talked to my grandfather was a very quiet person. Didn't communicate that well. His name was Noel, Noel, became Newell in the translation. But he died at a relatively young age. I think he was about 60 when he died. Died suddenly, and my father was being the oldest in the family, the oldest male in the family, more or less carried on from after he died. But never talked very much about his father and mother and so forth during my childhood.
Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of this started, you people know probably, after they wrote and had the TV series called Roots. That got a lot of people interested in their lineage and going back. And you don't have to be a Rabideau to be interested. Everybody out there wants to know something about, and it's out there. And there are a lot of people like Clyde who could help you, ask information. Go down to the Keysville, and you can find out some of the members, and they can help you out. I have helped a few people out. I'm not very proficient at this, but I know a little bit about some of these things. There are books like this out from different churches. There are some out from groups of churches, particularly up until 1900. The church won't give information for publication like this out less than 100 years.
That's a state law. The state of New
State
York.
law, okay.
See, that's other states are much more lenient with information. New York State is not very lenient about giving out vital statistic information.
Right. So they just don't want certain people are still living, and they don't put
I think
that
it's up
out.
to 1915. I think there's an 85-year period or somewhere 80-year period. I think it is in New York.
Well, all I got to say, young Clyde, if you're watching this, someday in the future, when your dad is no longer here, and I'm not here, and some of us are not here, they're going to say to Clyde's children, I see your dad wrote a book, and not your grandfather. He's going to get credit for this. You realize that, don't you? Huh? You will.
That is if he outlives me.
There you go. Now you're talking. Your grandfather's father is the one who came over?
Raphael. Yes.
Raphael. Now, he came over, I think you said 1855?
1855 at the age of 13.
Okay, 13. So his father came over with the family.
Oh, I couldn't find where his father came over, but
I think he came over by himself?
he might have come over with and stayed with a relative,
Okay.
which was not uncommon in those
Okay.
days.
13 could be different reasons. A lot of people came over from 1855 until 1875. You find out in your talks why when you were looking
Economic
this up?
reasons mostly.
Uh-huh. Mostly
Economic reasons. The tradition in Quebec in those times was the eldest son got the farm. You were on the farm, the eldest son got it. Well, if you had a large family, that left the other 7 or 8 sons with either to help out in the farm or to go find additional land. And times were difficult, and they came back down for employment. And during that time, the French took menial jobs, low-paying jobs in Clinton County and going down into Massachusetts and so forth. They came down for survival.
I wonder if many of them came down because of the Civil War, where they might have been fighting as mercenaries. You have any idea? Never picked that up?
That's possible. Some did come down. Some were excommunicated. With many different reasons, but the main reason was economic.
Economic. And then many times they left here to go into New England because that's where the factory jobs were. We didn't have many. But there were mining here you
There
mentioned.
was mining in Redford. It was the Redford area, Black Brook area. Many of them came down and work in the mines there. Working with lumber, lumber mills, charcoal, and so forth was the main occupation, and farming, of course, eventually. Fur trapping, like my father.
Okay, now we were talking about what were they doing in Canada before that? Were they farmers?
Farmers. Farmers.
And
There were some sailors, but mostly farmers. Sailors because they carried goods up and down the St. Lawrence.
and maybe some trappings.
Trapping, yes.
Too.
Yes.
All right. Obviously, Hometown Cable is not the first group who has contacted you to talk with you, to find out about your book, about Clyde Rabideau and period. The other day when Don called me, I said, we got to get back to him, Don. We haven't set him up. He said, well, he's having a meeting today. that day. You were having an interview that day while we were here.
The Plattsburgh Press is going to do a Spectrum article on the 14th of this month, which is July, about the migration of the French, why, when, and how they came down, and so forth. And someone referred them to me, and they came and interviewed me, and I give them my take on it.
So it wasn't a story about Clyde Rabideau, but it was because what you know by doing this,
Right.
that you found out why people came
And I've
down.
learned a lot about the French by doing this. I've learned that there are more French across this country than I would have ever thought. More French that came from Quebec, not from France. I mean, originally from France, but through Quebec. It's amazing the number of French people throughout the West.
Okay, when I see all this work here, and he hasn't got 95 and 96, 95 not in print yet, so we're imposing on him for time. We'll take a short break and see where we're going to go, or we'll be closing out shortly. Thank you much for watching Hometown Cable. On every day, 5 times at 12:30, 4:15, 8 p.m., midnight, and 8 the following morning. 5 chances to see the same show. And if you've sat through all of this and it's only 12 o'clock, you can see it 4 more times. You can continue to watch Clyde Lewis.
Clyde Rabideau.
I just wanted to see if you're listening. It's Clyde Rabideau. We don't usually have any problem when we're talking with people, and they aren't always as flowing as you have been. You said you enjoyed this today.
I've enjoyed it.
Have you?
Yes, I've enjoyed it.
Particularly talking about something that you're so interested in, and just your life in general, right? The whole family. And we figured it would be excellent, not only for Rabideaus in general, but if we get into Moore's Forks, there's a lot of people up there that know the Rabideaus and are the Rabideaus.
Altona, Moore's Forks, Alder Bend,
That's
Sandplain,
exactly
Rouse's Point.
that's where this is mainly shown in Time Warner. Do you want to say hello to any of those people up there, just in general? Even the Rainvilles are related, for crying out loud.
All the relatives. When I stop in, say hello to me.
Okay.
Probably looking for information.
And again, he was kind enough to say yes if you have some questions in general about genealogy. You don't have to be about the Rabideaus, but Rabideaus, I guess, goes without saying you're willing to talk to them. But anybody, just in general, if you're looking for some kind of a tip, how do you get to this Montreal place he mentioned, give Clyde a call, and he'd be very pleased to help you. It's hard to find, obviously.
Glad to.
He's very busy, and he's with worthwhile, lasting things that many people will bless Clyde Rabideau when they're looking for something in 1993 from this county 50 years from now. They're going to say, wow, this man did this.
They probably can call me up 50 years from now and tell me, too.
Oh, there you go. Well, you've got apparently your father died in 88, you said. How old was he?
He was born in 1902, so he was 86.
Okay, and your mother is 89,
Right.
so you've got the genes for it.
Rabideau's lived a long time.
Much to the chagrin of a lot of people in the county.
Probably so. Probably so.
Thank you for putting up with us, Clyde, very much, and for being so willing to talk with us. And I'd like to thank Don Rainville again for telling me, first of all, about the book, and for getting me a copy, and for getting us in contact with Clyde. He mentioned it to you, I think, when we were talking. He just found out we hadn't contacted him again after the first time, and we thank him for that. And anybody out there that thinks there's something that someone we should be talking to, that people would be glad to see about, to see. Something for the record, something to keep. He's keeping it in the form of family. Calvin's keeping it in the form of pictures of what's happening in the North Country. We appreciate very much your time, and continued good success to you and all you do here, and your trip to Hawaii, and your wife coming back. How long will you be here?
I'm going to be here on the 1st of October. She's coming back just for a week because she has a business.
A week? Wow, that's all she has is a week. You got to get her retired from that business.
Well, I know. She's got to sell it. She's the president of the company, but probably going to sell in the next 2 or 3 years.
What kind of a business is it?
She manufactures clothing, a very, very good, several lines of clothing, women's clothing. Very interesting business that I helped her out with during the winter last year after I retired.
Is it a big business?
It's a big business. She manufactures. She doesn't retail. She wholesales to several stores throughout the mainland of the state. What we call the mainland if we're in Hawaii. Hawaii
Right.
and several islands, Japan, several foreign countries.
Because now Hawaii is made up of a lot of the Japanese.
My wife is Japanese.
She's Japanese.
She's Japanese.
The
third generation. Her
okay.
father was at Pearl Harbor when it was bombed.
Was he incarcerated or anything at that time?
Not incarcerated, but very close to it. He had to live in a fenced-in area during the
He
daytime.
did, huh?
Yes, he
Yeah.
did.
Just
Yes,
because they were Japanese.
Right.
The Irish, you wouldn't have to do it because they can't tell them right off the bat. But the
There was a lot of
Japanese,
paranoia. And it's
we had it here in the
understandable.
United States. It was bad, of course.
It was understandable,
Yeah.
but yeah, he suffered because they were Japanese. But he was there. He was on Pearl Harbor.
Is he still living?
No, no.
All right, well, it's been very interesting for us in general talking with you, Clyde.
I've enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. And don't forget, every day, Hometown Cable, we don't expect you to watch every program every day. I don't, but I at least tune in, see what's going to be on, check it out. Some things I'm very interested in. Some I don't think I'm going to be interested, but I found out I am. And you can get all your village and town and school news right here on Hometown Cable. A lot of work put in by Calvin and his brother Sam, and show your appreciation. Become a patron. And I know I don't get paid, but if you like what you see me, I'm always willing to hear that you like something. If you don't like it, tell us that too. I might adjust what we do. If you don't like Clyde Rabideau, that's his problem. It's not mine. And remember, don't get mixed up though. There's a senior and there's a junior. Or he's not a senior. The other one's a junior. Clyde M. Rabideau. Thanks very much, Clyde.
Thank you.
Pleasure.